We've all been there. Training's going well, you're finally seeing some good results and making progress, but you feel the twinge, the pop, the searing soreness after a big session. But you ignore it. You put it in the back of your head, it can't be. I'm finally getting somewhere, there's no way that's an actual injury. I'm just going to ignore it and keep pushing through. Does this sound familiar? Yeah, I bet it does. We've all done it. Grin and bear it, hope it just goes away, and like clockwork, like the relentless advance of the tide, it worsens inevitably. You adapt or alter things, but still it regresses. This is the pathway of most chronic injuries. Whether it's a shoulder labrum tear, knee bola, back weakness, if it's a chronic injury in sport, its genesis was likely similar to the injury outlined above. So today I want to talk about the psychology of injury, particularly how our psychology can lead to higher incidences of chronic injury in some athletes. Being injured is one of the hardest parts of an athlete's life. It's unavoidable in many contact sports, but in strength sports, speed sports, power-specific, non-contact sports, we're usually open to injuries of a chronic nature more so than the catastrophic bone-cracking, tendon-tearing variety. Because of this, we garner a huge amount of control over our own injury profile. If we are weightlifting, powerlifting, crossfitting and so on, and you're a non-professional athlete training recreationally, then for the most part we make the decision to push through a pain and discomfort, and therein we hold the power to limit our own risk of chronic injury. Let's take Timmy and Tommy as an example. Let's say both are 28-year-old weightlifters competing twice into 2024, and both have been training for around 3 years. Both lifters are going to compete this September and so have a long time to prep and make ready. The two lads start training hard and they decide to push their squat hard now. They increase their frequency up to 4 times per week and really hit a lot of volume. After a month of training, Timmy and Tommy have sore knees and are both beginning to develop the early stages of knee tendonitis. Timmy came second in last year's competition and so has something to prove. He decides to push through and holds on. Tommy, on the other side, has no desire to get injured and so takes a small deload, regresses 2 weeks and goes to 2 sessions per week of squatting. Well, who do you think has the better outcome here? Well, obviously, there's a million things going on here. No two athletes are identical. Did either seek medical attention? Was there previous history of injury? Were their squat mechanics poor? But with all that being said, it's clear and obvious that one of these situations is going to be far more likely to develop into a chronic injury than the other. So, your psychology affects how likely you are to be injured, particularly chronically injured. In the same way where some people drive fast or live dangerously and other people don't, so too do some people push training hard and may stray a little too close to the sun while their counterparts may not. Now, this is all on a spectrum. Some people push incredibly hard and destroy themselves, while some people never push hard and will forever be kept below the tide line of mediocrity. As with most things in life, the edges of the spectrum are not a good place to be. We see successful athletes who we might think of as living at the farthest edge of this spectrum, particularly the upper side, but this is simply an error of perspective. These extreme outliers, the psychos of sport, are probably only 30% of the way to the top of that spectrum, a mere 7 out of 10 on the scale of self-destruction through training. And how do we know this? Well, it's simple. The athletes on the furthest edge, the most overtrained, are already done. They crashed too many Formula 3 cars to make it to Formula 1, they were out for too long during their high school career to make it to college or pro sport, or they burnt out too early as a young athlete to ever fully physically develop. Think of whoever you like for this. Think of someone like Tiger Woods. Thousands upon thousands of hours of physical training, running, lifting weights. You probably think he's the most extreme case as a golfer. Absolutely not. There are tens of thousands of people just like him who probably pushed harder than him and then simply stopped and dropped out of the sport. Look outside of sports for a sec and look at someone like David Goggins. Do you think he's the furthest edge of the spectrum? The most extreme case of pushing himself through exercise? Of course he's not. He's probably not even 2 standard deviations from the mean. He's just the only one left to look at. Millions of people have run through their knees, millions of people have exercise addiction, but the problem is we don't see them because the selection dictates they will more than likely have already given up. But what am I actually saying here? Don't push yourself too hard, don't try hard. Abso-fucking-lutely not. Most people watching this don't need to try less hard. But what I want to convey is that the malleable blob of grey matter in your skull is responsible for most things that happen to you. You have free will to make good decisions, there's good information available out there for you, and you can control the likelihood of you being chronically injured. I have absolutely no doubt that ego has led to more incidents of chronic injury than all other sources combined. Having that element of self-reflection is hard, trust me, I know. I've run myself to leg fractures, I've dissolved my quad and patellar tendons to Swiss cheese, I've turned my brain into a calcified lump of barely functioning idiot dough, all without ever receiving a cent for playing sport. And think about it too, this was all while having a very good understanding of exercise science, of programming, and a circle of friends and associates pretty much unrivaled by most people in the world who could have undeniably helped me, but I still fucked it. I still didn't help myself. I've a friend who's a really good athlete, but he has some issues with his back stemming from a very long torso. Because of this, he completely avoids posterior chain and core work because it kills him. He alters his snatch and clean technique to accommodate for this imbalance, leading to a very quad dominant and forward pull, and he avoids pulls as though they were the devil incarnate. This constant cycle of back soreness, regression, training through it, but then not addressing it, is his greatest downfall as an athlete and will undeniably limit his progress in the long term. But it is entirely, 99% his fault. He didn't control the genetic makeup which slightly skewed him towards a longer torso, but he does control everything else. And even with the understanding that this cycle of run, rinse, repeat is not going to bring him anything new, he refuses to address it. These cycles of recurring injury and chronic pain are not part of sport. They do not need to exist, and if you train and make progress and want to get better, then you can. Yes, you will need to push yourself. Yes, you will need to endure discomfort, but not chronic pain, not constant injuries, and certainly not a cycle of progressionless prehab and resting and then taking breaks that has you treading water until you inevitably give up. Always remember, knowledge is knowing tomato is a fruit, wisdom is knowing not to put it in a fruit salad. Be wise and get strong.